2024, we've already had a terrible Sony Spider-Verse movie that has come out as of recently, so to be honest, I'm not really expecting much other than let's just wrap this up. Let's just be over with this, because honestly, I'm starting to get frustrated with this whole idea that Sony has, and I don't want them to continue it. Just please end. Just wrap it up as quickly as possible, so that way it's less painless.
No, this is all the money that we have.
What is this feeling? It's like
This feeling?
It's like all of my problems have gone away.
I think you broke my foot.
Eddie, I need more money.
Venom: The Last Dance is directed by Kelly Marcel, with a screenplay by Kelly Marcel and a story by Tom Hardy and Kelly Marcel. The film stars Tom Hardy, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Juno Temple, Rhys, Ifans, Stephen Graham, Peggy Clark Backo, Alanna, Ubach, and Andy Serkis. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, Eddie and Venom must make a devastating decision as they're pursued by a mysterious military man and alien monsters from Venom's homeworld. For this movie's release, we have had two Sony Spider-Man universe films, whatever Sony wants to call it, in the case of Morbius and Man Web, which are easily considered to be not only the worst that Sony has put out, something that is Spider-Man related, but they are some of the worst superhero movies to have come out in recent years. This is pretty much, when people talk about superhero movies being bad, I can understand in the form of this, because these movies are just downright terrible. They're awful. They're hilarious, but let's face it, they're just terrible all around. With this being the last Venom film, I'm just hoping that this could end on at least a decent note. At least just wrap up this universe in some form or fashion, but at the very least for Venom, because I mean, at this point, a lot of people have now come to the realization that this Venom just isn't something that everyone is really asking for. There was promise in the beginning, but let's be honest, now that promise has kind of gone away, not a lot of people are excited, and so people just want this to end as soon as possible. After seeing this for myself, because I had heard that people were saying that this is the best of the Venom movies, I'm going to be as honest as I can be. It's not the worst one, but it ends on a whimper. And that's the saddest part about this is, if you look at Sony as a whole and what they've done with this universe, it's just a whimper all around. It's just sad. It's just desperate attempts by them to keep the property of Spider-Man going under their banner. There are some enjoyable parts to this movie, but there's a lot that feels wasted and just downright bad that I just cannot fathom enough when I say that this is why I just do not trust Sony with what they have done with Spider-Man. I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan, but I'm at the very least conscious of when a studio takes an IP and they just milk the hell out of it for what it's worth. And so watching this, man, they completely wasted this entire movie all around. But before going into the problems, here are the positives that I found with the film. Performances are fine for the most part. Tom Hardy still is enjoyable as Eddie Brock and Venom. He seems like he's having a fun time playing both of these characters all around. And I do, in some ways, and I can say this, both Eddie and Venom's relationship, despite being goofy and being very homoerotic, it does become a little emotional near the end of the film. Now, I cannot say that truly redeems what this entire relationship or the depiction of both Eddie and Venom have been throughout this series, but I'm just saying it does end a little sad in a way, but not something that I 100% was crying over, but just being like, oh, well, it ended. And to see their relationship just kind of end like that is a little sad to see, but oh well. Chiwetel Ejiofor is decent as Rick Strickland, a soldier hunting Eddie and Venom down due to the events of Let There Be Carnage, and so to have Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is already in the MCU as Mordo, be brought into this movie playing a different character. Ejiofor is a good actor. He does a fine job of playing a soldier who will do what he can to get the job done. I can at least give him credit in that he does the best with what he is given, and I think he makes the most of it because he does try to bring a little bit of emphasis on the hunting Eddie and Venom down, but also the serious oncoming threat of Venom's homeworld and I guess no, but really just a serious threat that poses to Earth. So I give Ejiofor credit in that he does try his best, and he is, I think, really the best part of this movie with regards to acting. Because besides Tom Hardy, who just seems like he's having fun, he, I think, is actually trying to make something out of this role, and I give him props for that. The action is fun. Every action scene made for an enjoyable and decent watch, keeping it from being boring all around. There are some action sequences that I think are pretty cool, and I think can be enjoyable at the very least to watch and to have a good time with. They're nothing crazy, they're nothing spectacular. I will say the ending of this movie, I think, is pretty good with regards to its action, and it does lead to just a big brawl with a bunch of characters with symbiotes. And so to have Venom and Eddie working together, fighting to stop these creatures and stopping the threat of Null, I think did make for an entertaining watch by the end of it. The cinematography as well. Cinematographer Fabian Wagner captures the series' style throughout, making it consistent. And that's at least the best part, is that at least the cinematography is consistent with most of the other previous movies. I would give more of a lead to Let It Be Carnage, because that felt more like it was trying to be more in the tone styling of being like the comics, whereas this is kind of tries to be a little bit more like a blend of those two, but really more towards like the first movie with being a more stylistic comic book film. But I think he does a pretty good job of capturing the action, how it's all being displayed throughout this entire movie. The music is exciting. Composer Dan Deacon crafts a score that makes sequences intense, keeping it from being dull all around, which is good, because if you don't have a score that can at least keep you entertained, then what's the point? And thankfully, Deacon does a pretty decent job with keeping the momentum and excitement factor when those action sequences go down. Aside from that, this is, I think, for me, a disappointing end to this entire trilogy. Now, I'm not saying it's on the level of the first movie, but this suffers from the same problems as some of the previous other films, and that's such a shame, because I feel like we could have improved upon the other ones, and unfortunately they couldn't, or at the very least, it couldn't improve upon the last movie, if you ask me. So here are the negatives that I found. Direction is crazy. Director Kelly Marcel makes a frantic and chaotic film, making it feel like what the first movie was with regards to how it's displayed, how she directs everything. It just all feels bombastic and chaotic. It doesn't feel like there is a type of flow or constant nature to the movie with regards to keeping it consistent. It just kind of feels like it's all frantic and all put together so quickly, and all just feels like a jumbled mess, that you just kind of feel like this movie was just put together so hastily. And of course, it makes sense because this was made when the writers and actor strike was going on. So I can probably tell that there was probably some reshoots as well as some changes being made to this movie. And because of the direction feeling frantic and chaotic, it becomes kind of noticeable with regards to how this all feels. The pacing runtime feels drawn out. It feels like the film takes a bit to get going and dips at certain points with a runtime of 1 hour and 49 minutes. I don't understand why this needed to be 2 hours. Just like with the first movie, why does this need to be dragged out for being like a 2 hour epic? Like, to me, if the movie is consistent and the movie is well told and is put together decently, then that's warranted. Or at the very least, like, if the pacing was still the problem, the pacing and runtime, fine. But these movies, both the first and this movie, have shown me, why do these movies in particular need to be 2 hours? Why do they? Because to me, this doesn't scream like this needed to be on the same wavelength as like Spider-Man in terms of how epic and grand in scope and scale and everything. It just is Venom. That's all it is. It's a Sony property. And I just don't feel like this warrants a 2 hour runtime, if you ask me. It goes on too long by the end of it. The writing is messy. Writer Kelly Marcel continues to struggle again with the comedy and serious moments. After this film, it shows that she doesn't know how to balance the tone of both of these elements. You have comedic parts, and then you have serious moments, and they just do not mesh well. I don't know what it is, but every time she does that, whenever she tries to blend both of those together, not working, not gelling, not jiving with it. It just all feels like it is just going against each other, and just feels like two separate entities mixed into one, but it's not working out. The visuals are half-baked, again, aside from the designs of Venom and some of the other symbiotes that you see in the movie, or the creatures that are after Eddie and Venom. They all look good. I think the designs look pretty well in terms of how they're supposed to look. But beyond that, everything feels too drenched in CGI. Like, very much so. Even like, sometimes even green screen moments are drenched in CGI. It just becomes too much by the end of it. It becomes so much so that it is so reliant on visual effects that that's what they think is going to get by with this movie. And listen, the MCU does it. But at the very least, the MCU has at least CGI not of recently, but for the most part, most of the visuals that we have seen come out of the MCU prior to what we have been consistent and have been well at the very least. Here, the visuals just drench this entire movie into just being slop. The villain is boring. Noel is just plotting, but sits throughout the entire movie. He just sits on a damn fucking throne throughout this entire movie that it becomes annoying and so boring. And I get the reasoning as to why he's just sitting there, but it becomes a point of, why should I be intimidated by this guy? Seriously. If they are thinking that this is supposed to be like the next level of Thanos, think again, because at least Thanos was intimidating. At least Josh Brolin brought some intensity. And poor Andy Serkis, he tries, but the way that this character is supposed to be set up, not scary. I do not find this character scary in any sort of way. Not only will this disappoint Null fans, because of course, from what I know, Null is pretty decent in the comics, and people actually like the symbiote lore with regards to how they were created by Null and what Null represents. But this makes Drake slash Riot from the first movie look like a better antagonist. Because at least they do shit. This villain does nothing. Null just sits there and talks. That's it. That's all he does. He just monologues and talks, and that's about it. Why should I be intimidated by this guy? Seriously. By the end, I'm just like, what did that amount to? The story is everywhere. The film has so much going on that becomes exhausting. It's also not a very satisfying end to Hardy's tenure as Eddie Brock slash Venom. People, in a couple of years, Venom will be 10 years old, which is daunting and kind of shocking to me that Sony managed to crank out at least 6 movies. One of them is about to be 10 years old. And how this all ends feels not satisfying. I don't feel completed with this trilogy. I just feel like this trilogy was just wasted overall. But this story as a whole, what they came up with, if you ask me, just felt half-baked. It just felt like it was rushed at the last minute, put together to just make something so we can have a third film in a trilogy, and that's about it. I am just left wondering what did this amount to with this story? Like, seriously, what did this story amount to? Okay, yeah, Venom and Eddie no longer being a thing anymore. Alright, fine, but even then, a lot of people are like, I don't care. I'm ready to move on. They're probably thinking, what is the MCU and DCU doing? Nobody's asking, what's Sony doing with this universe? They're probably thinking, where's the next Spider-Verse movie? When's the next Spider-Man movie? Like, they're asking those, not this. Nobody's asking for more of this. If you ask me, I don't think anybody cares about this. But I could be surprised. There's probably some fans out there, but I'm just telling you, this is just all pointless. For this to be the last in the trilogy, it's just a complete whimper all around. They also try to tease stuff with Null, but honestly, if you ask me, I don't think anybody cares. Nobody cares about this character. As much as I understand that he is probably an intimidating villain in the comics, let's be honest, in this movie, he is not intimidating at all. He's just boring as hell, and I just don't want to see more of this villain. Slowly showing how Sony just truly just doesn't understand this property. They don't. They don't have anybody to control this property. They don't have anybody in charge like a Kevin Feige or James Gunn slash Peter Safran. They don't have anybody of that nature. It's just Sony. That's it. That's all it is. It's just Sony just putting these movies out for the sake of, let's just make sure we keep the property of Spider-Man because we know we'll lose it every chance we get. And so the fact that they just think that this is all good and dandy and they think that, oh, this is going to make Spider-Man fans love this. No, you just give Spider-Man fans a reason to still hate in every sort of way. Same goes to Avi Arad. Nobody likes you. Just go away. Just retire. Nobody really wants you to judge Spider-Man or any sort of property anymore. I am giving Venom: The Last Dance a 4 out of 10. This is just not a good movie at all. I don't think it's the weakest in the trilogy, but let's face it, I mean, that's not hard to set. And compared to the Sony Spider-Verse movies that have come out, I mean, it's not the worst, but at the same time, it's not a high bar. Is it better than Man Web? Well, yes, it is definitely better than Man Web, but that's not saying much. Is it better than Morbius? Sure. Is it better than the first Venom? Yes. But, like, guys, there's no high bar. It's all low. So, I'm just hoping with Craven soon to be released, I'm just ready to wrap this up. I don't want Sony to do this anymore. I'm just done. I'm beat. Please stop. Time out, okay? TKO, I'm done. I'm done with this bullshit, if you ask me. So now we are done with the October movies. We are now moving on to November, starting with Red 1. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other movie TV show reviews coming soon.